Welcome to Hindu Sanskriti with Vaishali Shah. I'm your host, Harleen Jabal. Namaskar, Vaishali.
Namaskar, Harleen.
Today's episode is about reasoning customs. Why are they done, or why are certain things done in a certain way? Like you have the ringing of the bell in the mandir, or lighting of a diya, or even arti for that matter.
All the Indian traditions or Hindu customs, we call it as, they all are done with a reason. There is either practical, spiritual, or materialistic reason behind any ritual. For example, you must have seen people doing Shashtang Namaskar in the temple, where a man, not a woman, would be on his stomach and lie down on the floor completely, doing Namaskar to the deity, saying that I surrender unto you with my mind, body, and soul. So, there is a reason of doing it, of the Shashtang Namaskar. Generally, ladies don't do it. Ladies just do the Namaskar where they just bow down to the deity and they are on their knees sometimes and sometimes not. That's how they do it. Then, you know, our famous tradition of greeting somebody with two folded hands, which means is that I bow down to the divinity which resides in you with the divinity which resides in me. Then you must have seen that we do diya lighting on various occasions. Like the moment we want to start an event, the first thing which we do is we do diya lighting. We consider fire as the most auspicious thing or element in our life. Second thing is by lighting the fire or by doing diya lighting, we are trying to invoke a light of knowledge, a light of vision, a light of wisdom in our mind, and we want to create that vibration into that place. You also must have seen that when you go to a temple, you are always being given some prasadam. And this is again very unique to India or all the various Indian traditions where the prasad is being offered to the god first and then being shared to the devotees. The reason behind it is that because we consider food as an important aspect of life. What we eat is what we are. When we offer it to the god, we try to remove the impurity of the food and we try to say that whatever is given to us by you, we are offering to you and that is what we are taking back from you. And we consider that as a blessing. So that is how we get this prasad in any temple. When we go to the temple, we ring the bell. We don't go and ring the bell to wake up the god. We do that so that first of all that sound creates an emptiness or the purity into our mind so that we are ready to receive the blessings of the god, maybe through rituals or by prayers or bhajan or meditation in any form. But that is the first thing is done while entering the temple because it's the beginning of our prayers, and with the sound that to done with the bell which is made up of certain material only. So you can imagine that there is so much of significance of having certain things around the temple in our life, the metal which we use, the sound which is being created, the way we do it, when we do it, how we do it. And these are the reason why we do certain things in our traditions. And because today's generation want to ask questions in why, what, how, and they want to know logical reason about everything. So I thought of putting this section as reasoning customs. So we understand the reasonal or rationale behind everything we do.
There are certain mantras that are recited almost every day. What is the importance of reciting a mantra every day?
Mantra is the sound or the words which are coined in such a way that it creates some sort of a vibration within our mind first, onto our body, and also in the surrounded area. When the rishis and the seers must have envisions, I'm sure they must have thought the reason behind it, the benefit behind it. There is always materialistic reason and spiritual reason behind any of the traditions we do. So those mantras were designed in such a way that it gives us power, it gives us strength, positiveness, it boosts us our confidence, it helps in our daily life, it purifies our mind, it purifies the atmosphere, and at the same time it brings the prosperity to our life. So, for example, when you wake up in the morning, you see your hands like this, the center of the hands, and you do the prayer called Karagre Vaste Devi. So, when you get up in the morning and before starting your day, before touching the floor, you want to actually acknowledge the earth, saying that I am being thankful to you that you are allowing me to put my foot on to you and letting me do what I want to do. So, that is when you do the prayer called Samudre Vasane Devi. So, before waking up in the morning, when you get out of the bed, you are going to touch the floor of the earth. So, that is a time when you want to be thankful and at the same time apologize to Mother Earth, and then you want to get on with your life. That is a time when you do Samudre Vasane Devi. So, when after getting up and you have your shower, there is a time when you want to remember all the 7 rivers which we consider as Sapta Nadi. That is the time when you say Gange cha Yamune cha. So, you remember all the rivers and saying that I am having this bath to purify my body and mind to start my day, and I am praying to this water element through which I am cleaning my body. Similarly, when you lit up the diya, so you again pray Shubham Karoti Kalyanam, Then when you are having your food, you pray. When in the evening again before going to the bed, you want to be thankful to the God for having wonderful day. Even if it is not wonderful, you still want to thankful to the God for giving you this life and giving you this opportunity, maybe which you could not make most out of it, but you still thank your God. And that is how you have the series of mantras which are chanted from morning till night. Apart from that, then you have your Ishta Devta, as in whichever God you like. If you pray to Vishnu or Shiv or Devi or Ganpati ji or Hanuman ji, you do their name chanting in the morning, or evening also is okay. Then you do certain mantras like Vishnu Sahasranam, Shiv Sahasranam, any other Devi's Sahasranam. By doing that, we are not only pleasing the God, we are trying to get the characteristics of those of any particular deity into us. Because generally people think the prayers and the daily mantras just to please and kind of praising. It's not praising, it's about considering the qualities of that deity into our life, and that is how we do the chanting of the mantra or chanting of their names.
So then what is the use or what is the meaning of yoga, puja, sadhana, havan and seva? Are they all sort of connected? Are they same, different? What are these all about?
There is a difference between puja, sadhana, seva or yagna. For example, yagna, where we have a havan, we have a fire sacrifice where all the materialistic things like rice and ghee and wood and other natural ingredients are being offered to the fire, is meant to create a vibration which gives us positive impact. It could be for material gain or it could be for spiritual gain. Both are acceptable, there is no problem. You can do the yagna for having a child or a wealth or anything like that. Then second thing you said yoga. Yoga is not only doing or performing certain postures. It's about connecting your mind, body and soul with the divine force, at the same time to create healthy body, so that with the healthy body you can have healthy things to do in your life. Then next thing which you asked me was meditation. So when you have so many emotions, complaints, you have many various pains in life, when those things become too dominant and you are not able to live your life properly, meditation is the best thing to help you, because that will calm you down, that will make you more receptive, you will be more positive about anything happens to our life. As people say, 90% is reaction and only 10% is action. So we purify that 10% action, that through meditation we elevate our soul to the next level. Then you said seva. Seva is generally, people consider that as a service to the human kind and maybe to animals and even through the temples. But seva also means when, especially the Vaishnavas, that when they adorn the Krishna with jewelry and dresses and offer the prasadam, and they consider him as part of them, and consider him as one of them, that is when what they do out of love and bhakti is called seva, where rituals like puja is not done. In case of puja, when we perform aarti, dhoop, offering flowers, nariyal, all that we do, these are the basic definitions I am saying. The elaborated ones would take one episode for each. So that is what is considered as puja, wherein we perform certain basic rituals to please the deity or devta.
So in the case of when we come to yagna, there are specific times, there are specific seasons, or what is the significance of performing them properly, and especially when to perform which one?
In earlier times, in the Vedic times or in Satyuga, yagna was our main lifestyle.
Okay.
So once one yagna was performed, it was always contributed by all the sections of the society. For example, cowherd or gocharan would bring the milk and ghee, carpenter would bring wood, kshatri or the kings would bring wealth, as well as he would do the sankalp. Brahmins would do the chanting of the mantra, Vaishya would bring the wealth. So one yagna was actually about creating about the economy or prosperity for the whole society, and everyone was involved. As time passed, we have lost that touch with that kind of lifestyle, and now we are into a totally different lifestyle. But it has a significant importance even today. So when like in today's time, mostly famous yagnas are Vishnu Yag, Shiv Yag, Rudri Yag or Chandi Yag or Ganesh Yag, where we are trying to please the Devta with series of mantras chanted for many number of or thousands of time and all that. And every day that puja is done within the yagna, and we do Devta Dhyanam, we invoke various Devtas, we invite them. So those kind of things are done in today's time for any reason. It's allowed to do for material gain, it's allowed to do for spiritual gain, and there is specific benefit of every yagna you perform. So whether it is small, maybe 1 day, 1 hour, or maybe it is for a month or a year, it is allowed.
So if a person is not able to perform any of these for whatever reason in their lifetime, are they going to face any sort of repercussions?
No, there is no repercussion, because we don't have this compulsion of any sort of yag or yagna or puja in our life. And that is the best thing about Hindu belief system. Whether you believe in God, you are still Hindu. When you say you are an atheist, you are still Hindu. You go to the temple, you are a Hindu. You sit at home and don't go to the temple, you are still a Hindu. You believe in idol worshipping, you are a Hindu. You think, no, for me Brahman is everything, you are still Hindu. You believe that I want to do the service through any other institutes, you are still a Hindu. You are still doing something for the society. When you say, no, I want to donate money to the temple, and through that I want to do some service, you are still a Hindu. So you can imagine that how being a Hindu, you are so flexible. You are allowed to believe anything you want to. You are an atheist, you are a believer, you are a non-believer, you are a Nastik, you whatever you want to call yourself, you still remain a Hindu. The concept of good karma and bad karma is very common across the world. When you kill somebody, you hurt, or you do some damage to somebody's life or to animal. So those things are considered bad even in Hindu belief system or Sanatan Dharma. But To make your life better and elevate your soul, you have thousands of ways of doing it, which are prescribed in the scriptures. But if you don't do it, you don't go to hell. But then your karma can definitely take you to the hell.
So there are also, going back to customs, there are two specific customs that happen in death. There is cremation, then we have marriage. Why do you cremate and not have the burial custom in Sanatan Dharma?
Your two questions about marriage and burial. I'll give you some logical reason behind cremation. First of all, logically you have to think, we have been living on this earth for millions of years. If we were occupying the space on the earth for all these years, by now we would have actually run out of the space to do any burial. So you can imagine that it is impractical, first of all. Second thing is, when you do the burial, the soil or the earth, it becomes useless for agriculture, and it creates a negative impact on the atmosphere, because the element of the body which once occupied by a soul is still there. So you know, that is the reason people are scared to go to a graveyard and all that, is something which is natural, that it creates some sort of fear. Whereas we consider our cremation system, first of all, it is very eco-friendly. You give your body to the fire, because we believe that we are made out of those 5 elements: earth, fire, water, ether, space. So once we give our body to the fire, which is above all these 5 elements, we completely merge into those 5 elements, and then we become ashes. When we become the ashes, which is very minuscule part, we generally give it to the water, or we offer it to the water, or generally river. A lot of people think that, oh, why this is not considered as polluting water, but it is not. Our ashes is the best water purifier. It settles all the impurity of the water to the bottom. So that is the first benefit. Second benefit is, when fish is trying to look for the space, or the mammals or the other water creatures, this ashes builds the house for them.
Okay.
So you can imagine that it helps them to procreate, because you must have seen those shells. So where those shells are coming out from? They are coming out from this kind of ashes and other elements which are there in the ocean, through which they are able to procreate. And ocean, being the largest element on this earth, it has the capacity to accept ashes of millions of years. But now we have put all the plastics into the ocean, which ocean doesn't have any capacity to accept, and it's coming back to us now. So you can imagine that how the rishis actually found the best way of our lifestyle. As I had mentioned earlier, that we have 16 sanskaras, marriage being the most important sanskar or the ritual. We follow numerous steps in the wedding. The first is that we exchange the mithai, called roka, or we exchange our commitment, that okay, this is the time, this is how we want to live together, and and it is generally arranged by parents, and where horoscope is matched. It's not because we are superstitious, it's because we want to be extra sure that our marriage becomes successful, it's fulfilling, you have children, you have prosperity in life through the marriage. And that is the reason we took so many precautions. We prefer generally to get married into our own family. There is a reason behind it, that we want to be in our community, because a woman has to leave the house and goes to another house. The more familiar it is for her, the better it is for her to accept them. The extreme circumstances would stress her out, the marriage would not work, people would not be happy, and then the whole purpose of marriage dilutes. So that is the reason the arranged marriage was 1,000 times better than the love marriage, because their family background, profession, compatibility, customs, traditions, everything is being matched. Then of course after engagement we have marriage. Traditionally that used to be for 3 days, 4 days, even 5 days or a week, where we follow various traditions of haldi lagana, then doing the hasta medap, which we call it, then doing the 7 vows, then doing the fera around the fire. Now again, fire being the most auspicious element, which is above all the 5 matter which I said, considered as the closest to the god. Our soul is considered as the form of fire. We have fire in our body, which is called Jatragni. So that way, fire being the most important element, we take the round of the fire, which we call it Fera, and we commit to each other in the presence of fire. And that is how the marriage is performed.
I hope that's fired up your appetite for another exciting episode. This is Hindu Sanskruti with Vaishali Shah. I'm your host, Harleen Jabal.